Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. We are going live for workshop 4 in our 9-day challenge, how to go from invisible to influential, trusted authority with a podcast if you are a coach or a consultant. If this is the very first time you are joining me, you're watching the replay, please put hashtag replay. Let me know where you are from. And if this is the first time you're joining me live, go ahead and let me know where you are listening in from. So as I mentioned, we are going through a number of key things that you want to have in place in your business. It's an absolute must, actually, even before you launch a podcast, for sure, is one of the things that I've been saying all along. But for some of you, you may not even really want to start a podcast. The things that we have been covering over the last 3 days and now today is very important for you in your coaching or consulting practice as well. What we've been doing is really talking about message. We've been talking about brand. We've been talking about how do we get all of the things in your head, your certifications, your experience. And some of that experience may not necessarily be relevant, or when I say relevant, it's not in the industry that you are now working in your coaching and consulting practice, but rather things that you've learned and developed in other industries and other situations, involvements, maybe even in corporate. It's still very relevant. And how do we package all of that together? So we're talking about how to go from invisible to influential, trusted authority with a podcast. But today we're going to be talking about the power of momentum. I think momentum is often not really spoken about, but so important when it comes to building business. And how do we set up something that enables us to build momentum so that we're not feeling exhausted each and every time we finally get a client, and it feels like we've run a number of marathons just to get one client. And let's face it, we need more than just one client, don't we? Because we want to impact the world. So we're going to talk about how to attract and generate a steady flow of ideal clients right to your door so you never have to chase leads again. Remember, I spoke to you yesterday about Kashmira Modi, one of my clients, who said she's gone from 80% hustling and getting new clients. And then the balance of that was working with clients and doing what she loved. As coaches, we want to get out there and coach. The marketing, not so much. The hustling, not so much. But now, because she's put into place her core business foundations, everything that we've been speaking about today and over the last few days, she's now gone to 90% working with clients and 10% doing the marketing, because she doesn't have to really chase leads anymore. The content that she continues to put out there continues to build her brand as the expert, the specialist, the trusted authority she already was and is. And I know for many of you, you are already experts and specialists, because many of you are bringing your expertise, the life you've lived, the challenges you've overcome. What's that University of Hard Knocks, I think is a saying. A lot of that is now what you're teaching clients to be able to navigate through, and how you can nurture listeners into leads from your very first episode. My name is Anne Marie Cross. I know many of you here already know me, which is wonderful, but there may be many more who have not. So my background is in personal branding, and now I really integrate personal branding with business and podcast strategy for coaches and consultants. And many of them feel invisible. They've got a wealth and depth of knowledge, but no one really knows about them. So what I do is help them go from invisible to influential, trusted authority, the choice versus just a choice when their ideal client is ready to move forward, and do that with a mixture of personal branding, messaging, taking your programs and, giving you clarity and how to develop all of those, and then bring them out to the world, and then launch a podcast on top of that. How to get the best from today's event. We're going to rush through these. As I said, there's so much I want to share with you again today. Access the workbook if you haven't already, and go back and listen to all of the workshops if you're just joining me for the very first time. And for those of you who have been joining me along each day, you may want to go back now, because after today, you've kind of got a bit of an overview of some of the key things that you really want to start to see. Do I have these in place in my business? And for many of you, you've identified now and got clarity around, you know what, I haven't really gone that deep in that area. I need to focus on that. Because remember, I talked about layered learning. Now, each time you learn something new, you've got a different neuro pathway in your brain, because we're all coaches. So I'm allowed to use some of this jargon and terminology. I'm giving my permission to do that because you kind of know what I'm talking about because you're trained in that way. We just want to make sure that your clients who probably aren't, don't use that kind of language with them, just giving you a heads up there. So what you're doing is when you're going back over the workshop 1, workshop 2, workshop 3, and go ahead and listen to me in double speed, because some of this you've already gotten, but you want to just pick up, have I missed something? Do I need to hear that again, what Anne-Marie is saying? And then you can then document some of those things in that Take Action Guide. There's a calendar and agenda, so you know exactly what each day has been. And for those of you who've been following along and you've been doing your ahas, go ahead. If you're still just joining me, you can still have a couple of entries in the draw, which we will be drawing and announcing actually tomorrow. Commit to your success, even though you may not have paid for it. I'm sure, and I'm hoping that you've gotten some really great value for this. As I mentioned earlier, so many people who've come to various challenges and lives and things like that have said, I've gotten more value out of this than I have in the coaches that I have invested in and the experts that I've invested in. That's my intention for you. Leave self-doubt behind, leverage your workbook, write down your top questions and be inspired. And that is the link where you can go and get your workbook. The prizes, my scholarship to the Invisible to Influential Trusted Authority with a podcast 12-month acceleration program. It's worth $10,000. Are you sharing your ahas? Just giving you a heads up that might have something to do with how you can put your name in the hat for the running. I love these ahas because for me, and this is something that you should be doing for your clients and with your clients as well, but even your community as you are sharing content, because what it does is it validates back to you number of key things. What areas are making so much more impact for your clients and for the community so that you can continue to speak in those areas? So Laurie says audio requires less energy for your listener. We spoke about this yesterday, where even neuroscience has confirmed that if you are constantly looking at video all the time, it requires more energy versus if you are just listening. So that just validates why a podcast, an audio podcast, is so good. Another thing about audio podcasts, you don't have to worry about your lippy ever wearing off because no one can see you. And if you've got a bad hair day, no one can see you either. So you can do your podcast in your PJs if you want to. Not that I actually ever have, but if you wanted to, hey, who's saying you can't? It's so true, says Laurie. The brain always wants to conserve energy. So it's a good reminder of the value that this brings to them, as well as convenience. And she also got thinking about trademarking, because yesterday we talked about IP, intellectual property. And says, my aha for the day was the importance of having clarity around milestones and markers. Absolutely. And that I can make a model of my teaching and programs and even certify other coaches. You certainly can. Nia just said, my aha is about the importance of having systems in place. I love me some systems, and having clarity about the business models can really make process more efficient. And she loved what we shared about Cashmere. And Karen says, my aha is getting things in the right order. Have the right end in mind before building the system. Then come up with the signature system, including the milestones and the markers. So true. Because if you don't know the end in the mind, how do you know what systems and what structure and what message to put into place? Those steps that you're building are leading, you're walking alongside the customer journey towards your end in mind. All right, recap day 1, how to go from invisible underpaid coach to highly paid authority with a podcast. We talked about 3 indicators that you're not yet ready to launch a podcast. We talked about 4 podcasting mistruths, 7 common podcasting mistakes, 7 common personal branding myths and mistakes. We talked about the definition of what does distinguishable mean, uncopyable and irresistible. We spoke about the podcast positioning quadrant. There it is right there. You want to make sure that you have the right things in place to position you as a trusted authority. We talked about how people come for the topic when you're listening to a podcast, but guess what? they return for the host, and that is you. And the distinction model, which is what we're diving in a little bit deeper today. And that really, if you have everything in place in the distinction model, you will be able to go from invisible to influential, the choice versus just a choice, when your ideal client is ready to move forward. And I am just going to click my mouse because for some reason it is not working. We do it that way. Recap day 2 was the distinction model. We talked about message, and that day was really focusing on how to transform your expertise from a want to a need, from an overwhelming number of choices to becoming the only choice, while having a binge-worthy podcast that positions you as that trusted authority that your ideal client wants to work with. They need to work with you. We talked about authenticity, not a buzzword, it's paramount. And someone actually shared aha, which I hadn't taken a snapshot of, was I know that there's a lot of noise or a lot of people talking about authenticity. I wasn't really sure about what that meant for me. And so yesterday or in day 2, that gave us some real clarity around that, which is good. We talked about the importance of less is more when it comes to your message. Less is also more when it comes to, we talked about your signature system and then kind of the programs that you bring to life to be able to work with your clients. Remember, less is more too. You don't want to jam everything into that, because unfortunately, you may overwhelm them. And when it comes to your message, you don't want to overwhelm with so much content, so many different topics. Who are you today? What are you talking about today? You've got to bring that back to your umbrella statement. Don't underwhelm, unlearn industry jargon technologies. Technologies? No, there wasn't technologies. The way that we talk about our, our modalities and the things that we know. We want to see it through the lens of how our ideal client sees it, and then use the language. Because remember, we're building the foundations that will enable them to see you have the solution for their problem. So we talked about the message component in the distinction blueprint, your umbrella statement, your invisible thread, which was the markers and milestones, which a number of you have said it was really impactful. And we also talked about signature sayings and slogans. Those signature sayings and slogans that when you repeat over and over, because it validates teaching and it drives home a lesson, your clients will be thinking about that too. It's one of those catchy terms. And guess what? When they say that to themselves, who are they remembering? You. All right, recap day 3, which was yesterday. We talked about your IP, your intellectual property, and your signature system. Really important not to leave tens of thousands of dollars on the table, but really nurture those long-term client relationships that lead to profitable and sustainable business growth. Why you're going to do that with your signature system, which is your step-by-step pathway that you take your clients through in order to get them, from stuck to unstoppable, is when you've got your signature system and you know exactly how you're going to be able to support people from getting to where they are to where they want to be. Then when you look at your content, what can you start sharing? You can start unpacking aspects of your signature system into content, into podcast episodes, into lives and challenges, such as what I'm doing today. You bring your signature system alive through the content that you continue to share. That's what enables you to be so consistent in the message and constant. That's something that I learned from one of my mentors many years ago in personal branding. The constancy is the ongoing sharing of that specific message over and over again. So it really is that time factor. When you're consistent over time with a compelling message that speaks into the lives of your ideal client, they cannot help but notice you and want to hang around with you, because the content you're sharing is so impactful for them. And when they're ready, and a lot of times you're able to accelerate to get them from where they're stuck to saying, I need to work with you, because you're showcasing your promise of value and promise of expectation. And when we have an idea that, hey, this goal was actually achievable for me, I just need to fill in those gaps. And then you extend the invitation to someone and say, hey, I can help you. Let's do this. Your ideal client, why wouldn't they want to say no? It's like, let's do it. So that was what we did in day 3. And today, day 4, we're talking about momentum, the power of momentum. I want to repeat what I shared yesterday because it's so relevant to what we're talking about today. Remember, we're layering our learning, layering our awareness. And typically what happens when we start our business as a coach, we've got our certification, we're excited, we want to get out there and help anyone and everyone we can. We are open for business. So we're told we need to go to every networking event, be everywhere on every platform, do all of the things to get your message out there. Some of you may have been doing a bit more online networking. We talked about Zoom fatigue yesterday. We hand out our business cards. We try and connect with so many people online whenever and wherever we can. We say yes to opportunities to speak about our business and be mindful that every opportunity is not the best opportunity. I have spoken about social media when Career Success Radio was we were doing Career Success Radio, which I shared in Workshop 1, and I ended up tarnishing and weakening my brain because I was a personal brand consultant back then, helping people to, with their personal brand and their positioning online. But people, my colleagues and friends who were in business said to me, you need to come and speak and share. What are you doing with the social media stuff to be able to get your podcast out into the world using some of these tools? What's Facebook? What's Twitter? What are you doing? So I was happy to share, always happy to share what I've learned. And what I did not know then was I was watering down my message to the point where it was driven home to me. I was sitting with a colleague who'd known me for many years. We were on a committee together for a business networking group. And before the meeting started, it was just her and I in the room. And she said to me, I'm really excited. She says, I'm going to do a whole brand overhaul and I've just hired a personal brand consultant. You do personal branding, don't you, Anne-Marie? And I go, yeah, I do. She says, I'm so sorry. She said, I forgot about that. She said, you've been talking so much about social media. I see you as a social media guru. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I'd watered down my message, and a close colleague, a friend, completely forgot that I could support her in that area. So just a heads up, not every opportunity to speak is a good opportunity if you haven't got your message correct. And as I mentioned right at the beginning of this, a podcast is a great way to an opportunity to amplify your message if your message is already working. So that's why message before microphone. Then you meet for one-to-one coffee chats or a virtual chat, and you realize, hey, she is my ideal client. And your person whom you're speaking to may also be thinking, I think this person that I'm speaking to may just have the solution to what I am needing and looking for. So you invite her to a discovery call, you have a conversation, you realize that she really is a great fit. You can support her. You're hearing kind of similar things to your story and your journey, and you invite her to work with you, but she says no. And so what ends up happening is you go to another networking event, either online or in person. You're handing out business cards, you're promoting yourself wherever, whenever you can. You're posting on social media. By the way, these things, I'm not just making these up. These are the things that people have said to me over the last, number of months. You're showing up on Clubhouse. How many people have been doing that? You're going to coffee chats in person or on Zoom. You're having discovery calls. You receive a no thanks after no thanks after no thanks, and on and on and on that cycle goes. And then you do receive a yes. Hallelujah. You know that it's important to be grateful for that client, because you're just going to be able to work with them and know you're going to make such an impact in their life as you continue to support them. But there's a niggly feeling, isn't it? We know it. It's like, do I have to do this over and over again with each and every client that I get? Running a number of different marathons. It's like, I don't know about this. And that's just what Kashmira was saying, earlier on. Do I have to hustle that 80-90% to get a client? Because let's face it, where we do our best work is with coaching our clients, isn't it? And sharing our expertise. And the marketing is just something that we need to do to be able to get in front of their question that I asked yesterday. Is there a better way? I'm asking that again today. Yes, there is. And so we're talking about momentum. Let's define momentum and let's pack some more learnings on top of this for you. So how do you define momentum? I went online, and as you You typically do, and you have a look. What are some of the ways that they have defined momentum? I think of business momentum really is the impetus that drives your business growth. It's like that snowball effect, isn't it? You imagine that you're starting to, or even let's use a car. Let's use a car. So what you're doing is you've got a car there and you start building all the pieces. You put the wheels together. This is your business, by the way. And then you get ready and then you start pushing that car. And then it starts rolling a little bit and you think, fantastic. And then all of a sudden, there's another car. I think I'm going to start to build that car. And so off you are there. You drag your tools along there and you start putting the wheels together. And then the windows, by the way, us explorers will know this. We're talking about climbing mountains, isn't it? But we're using a car because it's kind of got that momentum. And then we start to push that. And then we're pushing that car forward. And then that starts to roll a little bit. Hey, this is fantastic. And then all of a sudden, there's another vehicle there. I'm going to start building that. That looks really interesting. So you get the idea. We're not building the momentum because when what happens is we go, hang on, what's happened to that first car? I think I might go and do a little bit of that because someone's actually standing there. They may need a lift in that car. So you go back to that car and you do a little bit more things around that, zhuzh it up a bit. You start pushing it again and it gets that momentum. And then all of a sudden, maybe that person's in the car and then you go to the next car and so on it goes. We want to build the momentum of that car that as we keep pushing, people are getting into that car. And guess what? It's building the momentum. You don't actually need to push it anymore because it's got the momentum that it needs to continue that flow. There must be a scientific term around that, the whatever. But that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're looking at it through the lens of the customer journey. And the customer journey is really just a path of strategic sequential steps and interactions that a customer goes through with a company, with you, a product or a service as they continue to build, know, like, and trust. And I love to simplify things as much as possible. So I love looking through the lens of a customer journey in 3 simple stages. Stage 1 is building awareness, stage 2, consideration, and stage 3 is decision. So stage 1, awareness. I mean, there are some clients who don't even know that they need help, and they're not even your ideal clients because they don't even know that they're stuck. And actually, as coaches, we know there are some people that love being stuck in their stuckness because guess what? That stuckness gives them the ability to be able to talk about something. We know those people, don't we? But there are other clients who have gotten awareness that, hang on, something's not right. I need support. I'm on this cycle and all of a sudden they hear one of your podcasts or they read a post or there's a graphic quote and they go, oh, that's great. What's this? And that graphic post shares a little bit of a snippet and then it has a link there and it says, come and listen to this episode. So off they click. They're now on your website or now they've downloaded, that episode onto their smartphone and they're listening to it. They now have an awareness of you. And as they're listening to you and you're building rapport, you're building that know, like, and trust with them, you're sharing relevant information that maybe they've probably not heard before in the way that you express it. Because remember, we talked about your brand. Sometimes you can be saying something that they've heard time and time again, but it's the expression of you and how you bring that forward, how you explain it to them through the lens of your markers and milestones that have them understand it in a much deeper way with much more clarity than they have ever had before. And I'm a true believer in right person, right time, right solution. And you just happen to be there. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And then stage 2, they're starting to consider you. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper through the lens of the podcast in a moment, but I just want to explain these different stages so that you're aware of how important they are. They're considering you. They're considering maybe some of the things that you're offering to them. And then stage 3 is really the decision stage. They're deciding whether or not to take that call to action, that step. They're deciding whether or not to work with you, whether now is the right time, and so forth. But each of these stages is different levels of where your ideal client is walking through that journey. So the content you share is going to be different. The information you share is going to be different. And so each of these stages is going to have different nuances, different strategies, if you will, to the content that you kind of share and what you set up. And so when we look at your ideal clients, this is something for you to consider too, because so often we know that we can help our ideal clients. And for some of you, this is when we're talking about the lucrative niche. There are some of your clients who are just going to take way too long to get to that yes, or they're never going to get to the yes. You got 55%. This is kind of a statistic that marketers have come up with when they kind of do a little bit of an evaluation of ideal clients out there in the marketplace. 55% of people are unaware that they even have an issue, and they're certainly not aware of you, and they're never really going to resonate. They're the people that love to, as I said earlier, love to be stuck in their stuckness because it gives them something to speak about. 25% of people are aware, and they are looking, they are searching, and they may just very well happen to stumble across your content, your podcast. 17%, they're in the decision-making mode. So they may either have been searching for a lot longer, or there are some people who are quick decision makers. I'm a relatively quick decision maker. I'll look at some content or whatever. I'll dive in. I'll try out a few things, and I pretty much know if I need it, and then I will invest, because I know that if I take my time to do it on my own, I mean, I've got goals. I've got goals in my vision board. So I want to get there as quickly as I can in the most efficient time that I can as well. 3% of people are actually in buying mode. Now, when we think about your ideal customer, that's even a smaller percentage of that 3%, because not all of those 3% are people who you really can do your best work with. And let's face it, you want to make sure that you position yourself with the ideal client, because you know that they're going to get the best results. And you also want to enjoy working with them. We've all had some clients who we felt like we're dragging them along with them. These are not the type of clients that you want to work with as a coach. They need to want to move and to shift and to do the activities. So when we're talking about momentum through the lens of the distinction model, how can we create something that will enable us to start building the momentum we need, so that we don't feel like we're starting from stationary point? If we think about that car analogy, that car that is just sitting there, but rather that car is rolling, and you don't have to put all of your energy to get it rolling. We do that through creating a compelling, what I call irresistible signature giveaway, a digital asset, which can actually be a physical asset too, because someone can print that out. So when I say digital, it's not just online that people can't touch or smell or feel, but this is what your ideal clients cannot wait to get access to. And guess what? It helps, or it starts to build the relationship with them. It starts the momentum building of that relationship, where they're now aware of you, and it gets them into your nurturing funnel, your pipeline. That's what we're going to talk about today. And the reason why it's so important when we look through the stages of the customer journey, as I mentioned to you, it's stage 1, awareness, stage 2, consideration, and stage 3, decision, that requires different content and a little bit more of an awareness, which is why, for some coaches, in the way they put their content, the content is really positioning as at a level of what you would do if someone was at the decision stage, but you haven't created content that enables someone to get into the consideration stage. And for some of you, you need to focus on building more of the awareness stage to get people aware of the digital asset. So you can see there's a sequence, right step, right sequence, lay the foundations. And when this is automated, when this is in place, that doesn't require you to push a button, to ring up, to do whatever, and it's something that your ideal client can do on their own, that is when you're not even having to be there, and that allows them to start building the relationship with you, and you're not having to actually do the work. How amazing does that sound? So how do we do that with a podcast? Well, your digital asset is your 3-part podcast series, but there's another piece that comes before that, which is what I want to talk about today. They go hand in hand, but this is what you can see happening here from the podcast. Remember, end in mind. Always like to talk end in mind, and then how the pieces of the puzzle fit into that, how the foundations and the steps fit into that. But if we have a look at the podcast profit pipeline, we can see it through the journey of those 3 stages and what a customer would be doing, or ideal customer would be doing as they move through that. Now, the awareness stage is your brand communication wheel. For some of you, you've definitely, a podcast is on your horizon, on your to-do list, on your vision board. You may be writing articles or blog posts. You may be sharing across social media. You may be doing networking in person and online. You may be doing speaking as well. You're building awareness out there. And then what happens is a call to action at the end of that, which gets people into your funnel, into your pipeline, into your nurturing sequence that gives them access to more of you, and you get into more of a teaching mode. You're starting to share things. You're starting to give them ahas and mini wins, because they're hearing things in a way that only you express, that they've never heard before, and they're ready to make that change. Remember, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And then you follow up with some beautiful emails that really just speaks to her or to him, to the point where when you get to that decision stage and you invite them to that, then they'll take that step. And then this continues to work behind the scenes over and over for you. And you don't even need to be there, other than sharing incredible content, which gets people into this beautiful pipeline. And so what I have done is created that 3-part podcast series, as well as a quiz. Are you ready to launch quiz? And that is what I wanted to talk about today. You know, what does that first step, that building of momentum, how do you do that with a quiz? And this is, and I will talk a little bit more about the quiz a little bit later as we unpack this, but this is the quiz that I use. Are you ready to launch your podcast? And there you have different pillars, and each of the pillars has different questions. And when someone is, let's have a look at the very first one here. And you would have seen me share my model, my podcast profit formula yesterday. S plus T plus U equals I to the power of 3. Strategy plus tactic plus U, as in YOU, equals influence, impact, and income. So here's the first question. My unique thought leader message that challenges the status quo in my industry and speaks directly into what my ideal client is struggling with and searching for. So I am totally clear on my unique thought leader message, and that challenges the status quo. And that really speaks directly into what my ideal client is struggling with and searching for. Now, your ideal client or my client will know, well, actually I am, and it is working for me. So I'm going to tick. I'm totally clear on my distinctive thought leader brand, stands out uniquely in the marketplace and cannot be copied by anyone. Oh, actually, no, I can't tick that one. All right, let's have a look at the next one. My Thought Leader podcast series monetization tactic is recorded, set up, and ready to build ongoing influence, impact, and income. What's this Thought Leader podcast series tactic that she's talking about? I don't even know what that is, so I can't tick that one. Let's have a look at the next column, and so on and so forth. That's what you want to create to start building that relationship. So you may be asking, what's this quiz that you're talking about? Now, this is not just an ordinary quiz. This is developed in such a way, and some of you may have already picked that up, that it continues to showcase and validate, which is so important when you're positioning yourself as that influential, trusted authority, a thought leader in your area of expertise. And remember, when I say the phrase thought leader, for some of you, you're going, ooh, how on earth can I stand out from everyone else? I'm not better than everyone else. I'm not saying you're better than everybody else when I say thought leader. I'm talking about you are better placed to support your ideal client through the journey that he or she is struggling with. And your thoughts, your ideas, your systems, your programs, your services can support that client through that journey far better than anybody else. And so you want your content to stand out, to compel your ideal client, because you are the best solution to support them. That's what I'm talking about. Your thoughts want to lead in the minds of your ideal clients because they can see you have something to offer, which of course you do. And of course, this quiz also validates your promise of value and promise of expectation. I spoke more about that in one of the previous workshops. Your quiz also highlights areas of growth, as in gaps, the areas that keeping yourself, ideal client stuck. I just gave you an example of that as I was going through just the first column of the quiz, Are You Ready to Launch? Where it was like unique and uncopyable. Actually, I haven't defined my message that way. And what's this monetization tactic? I've even really got no idea. So I can't tick that either. And so there is, an area of gap there that's already been identified. Now, what it also does is, if we look at this quiz, it gives them a mini win already. As coaches, we know this is huge, isn't it? It's huge because you've been able to support your ideal client just through your quiz. And guess what? If they're downloading it and you're not there already, how amazing is that? You've already been able to help them and you haven't even opened your mouth yet. How's that for coaching? But it's true, isn't it? Because you've just been able to support them in achieving clarity in where they are stuck. And as coaches, we know, don't we, that self-awareness with your ideal client is often the first step toward transformation. How can we begin to fix something that we don't even know is, I'm not going to say broken, but that needs to be reshaped, reformed? We need to change some of the beliefs that we have around something which is not working for us. We know how powerful that is as a coach. And by giving our ideal clients some clarity already, it's like, oh my goodness. It's like us as businesses, when you think about marketing for you as a coach and a consultant, you may not even realize where you are struggling. So what you're doing is you're doing all of the things, the bright, shiny objects. And, as I mentioned, your podcast is a great way to amplify your message. But if your message isn't working, it becomes a bright, shiny object because it's another thing that you've invested your time and energy and attention in that's not going to generate the results that you want. And so similarly with your ideal clients, they may be doing and working on something which is really not the area that they need to work on. As coaches, we know often the areas that our clients are struggling with is not really the area. It's just a consequence, isn't it? It's just an indication that a few things prior need to be looked at first. Let's unpack that first. So what we're doing through the quiz is helping them gain a little bit of clarity. But there's more. There's always more, isn't it, when it comes to this quiz? This quiz is so powerful that it continues to validate you, your programs and your services, so that you can not only use this as a way to build momentum, you can also use it in your marketing. You can also use it as a sales tool. It really is an incredible sales tool because guess what? You've helped your ideal client with a mini win. You've explored what's keeping her stuck from achieving her goals, given her some self-awareness. And what you've also done, and this is so powerful, because I know as coaches, many of us love coaching, but the word SALES, sales, is kind of a four-letter word, isn't it? But it's not. You're actually helping her see where she is now, and you've created a wonderful bridge to where she is now, where she wants to be, promise of value, promise of expectation. And guess what that bridge is? It's you and your program. And you've been able to do that all from one quiz. Where do you start? I'm glad you asked. I've prepared something earlier. All right, jokes aside, what we do is we look at the pillars of your signature system. And we created this yesterday. We looked at this yesterday. Remember I told you it's layered learning as you and building foundations. You would not build the walls of a house if you didn't do the footings. and then the foundations, and then the, I'm not a builder, so I'm just, but go with me. I know that there's some foundations before the walls go up, before the roof goes on, and so on and so forth. So similarly with your business, how can you start to create those foundations and then build something that continues to build momentum? Well, once you've got your signature system in place, the signature system comes from the markers and milestones in your expertise. You then develop a quiz starting with that signature system. And that's what you go to first. So I'm going to show some examples for you as we then unpack that, and you see how valuable it is. You see, you cannot really create a quiz until you're clear on the pillars in your signature system. You can see that you can't really develop your signature system till you really understand who your ideal client is, your markers and milestones, the expertise, the things, the activities that you want to teach, all of that's so important. One builds on the other. But your signature system, once you've got that clear and you know that it is really starting to generate some interest with the community and your ideal clients as you're starting to share content, you take each of those pillars and you develop some key questions around each of those pillars to help your ideal client gain some self-awareness, gain some clarity around, is this an area that she's stuck in? So that's really kind of what it is. You develop a quiz that's around your signature system with some really key questions that's going to dive in deep. As I showed you earlier, with the podcasting, are you ready to launch your podcast quiz? I wanted to show you just across the top there. I shared earlier the podcast profit formula. Then I've got a whole set of questions around the framework, which was the strategy. Remember, I shared that yesterday. So I have a clear strategy on how a podcast will help me cut through the noise to build my reputation as an industry thought leader, build a list of ideal customers from my very first episode, generate ROI quickly on a clear monetization strategy. Now, if my ideal clients can't put a tick to this, then they know that this is an area that they need to focus on. And each of these pillars has a teaching in my coaching programs and how I support clients. Then there's the funnel, the profit pipeline. Then there's technology and digital assets, the things that need to be in place to be able to leverage. And then there's a whole pillar there around production, around publishing, around promoting. So you can see what I have just done is through the lens of the quiz, identified questions that will enable my ideal clients to see whether they've got them in place or not. And guess what? There's nothing more, as I mentioned, empowering than for someone to see where they're stuck. If they don't have a lot of ticks there, it's like, okay, well, now I know where I need to get clear from. I've built the bridge. How am I going to get these things in place? So when someone looks at your quiz, who am I going to ask? Who am I going to get to help me to get these things in place, to build this bridge so that I can walk across it, take all of the learnings with me, the transformation, so that by the time I get to the end of the bridge, I'm winning. You, of course, you. Let's give you another example through the lens of the core business foundations. To confirm to you that I haven't just learned something or picked this up of someone. I did learn the concept of the quiz through one of my mentors many years ago, Kendall Summerhawk, who created some quizzes. But as I started to develop my own, I realized actually there's far more power when you go deeper and you really look at these pillars through the lens of your signature program. So I'm actually using and doing things. So it's not something I've heard and then I'm going to copy that and just bring it in to my own. I've really developed it over the years. So when you have a look at the 5 pillars here, this is what I've been talking about. And they are the core business foundations: your lucrative niche, your signature brand, your signature system, your signature programs. And now we're talking about your digital asset. And underneath each of those, they become modules of my programs, and each of the teachings that I teach within that, there's a specific question that is asking that. So here we go with the lucrative niche. Let's have a look at some of these questions. When it comes to marketing, I struggle to attract my ideal client and I'm not sure why. Yeah, that's me. I've tried lots of ways to promote myself, but nothing has worked well. Yeah, that's me. I'm sharing content, but it's not generating as many leads as I'd like. Yeah. I can be in a room of my ideal clients, introducing myself. No one really shows any interest. Yeah, that happens to me too. I struggle to define my ideal client, both demographically and psychographically. Help. So at that stage, there's a little bit of jargon in there, but it goes to show my ideal clients thinking, yeah, I don't have those things. Well, guess what? You haven't actually really defined your lucrative niche, because when you do, all of those things would be actually, yeah, I do have those in place. So I can't tick any of those. So you can see how powerful that is, that when someone is able to do a bit of a self assessment, they gain self awareness. You've showcased them a promise of value because you've just helped them to have that self awareness, that aha of where they're stuck. And through the promise of value and creating that bridge, and then kind of seeing this is what's possible for you. How can they get support? Through you and your. I've got a number of different quizzes that I have here, and there's nothing more powerful than when you hold up your quiz like this and you start talking about it and say, by the way, if you want a copy of that, go to such and such a link. That's my are you engaging interviewer or a podcast host? Here's my are you ready to launch your thought leader podcast quiz in person? So I can hold it up. It's something that we can hold physically. And then, of course, here is the Core Business Foundation quiz, which we went through earlier as well. There is nothing more powerful. You can create a whole month, 2 months, actually 12 months worth of content snippets around that in your podcast episodes, in your articles, in your blog posts. Now, if I think of one of my other clients, Piero Medesic, he's the Exceptionality Catalyst. We've been working on his quiz as well. And we've also developed for him, I remember I said to you as part of yesterday, your IP, to create your, your core principles as well, which validates your teaching. Why are they so important? This is just a beautiful snapshot of some of the things that we've created for him, his thought leader collateral. But he said, with over, and this is the importance of why you want to spend time in doing this. And he said, with over 2 decades in leadership roles across a multitude of industries, he's been in and out of marketing and branding seminars and personal development and training seminars, left, right, and center. And although the level of marketing and the brand congruency was good, he's now moving towards being uncopyable, because we've gone through what are the learnings, what are the milestones and markers, what are the teachings, what are your core principles that you really are teaching that no one else can copy through the lens of your journey and story. And for him, he's been able to gain that in only 2 months due to the clarity that he's worked through. These things, that the steps that I'm sharing with you really do work, and position you as that influential, trusted authority, so that you can not only just stand out from the crowd, you stand out for the crowd or in the crowd with your ideal client. So you become the choice versus just a choice amongst many other coaches who are probably amazing coaches. But remember, you're not better than them. You're better placed to help your ideal client. And there is enough business in this world for all of us as coaches and consultants. All right, what's the time? Remember, I said to you, I've got 2 back-to-back interviews at the beginning of the hour. All right, I think I have covered a lot of other information that you can now layer on top of what we have learned over the last 3 days. We've just packed that on in there. So now we take a breather and allow that just to sink in. For some of you, go and watch this again. Go and watch all of the others workshops as we've continued to move through, because you're able to see that from the beginning right through to the end. But tomorrow we are going to talk about how to continue building your reputation as that influential, trusted authority, your next best step. We're also going to have a celebration day, because we are going to share, or I'm going to share, who is going to be joining me on the 12-month acceleration program to help them go from invisible to influential, trusted authority in the scholarship. And so it's still not too late to get your name in the hat, and you may just be the lucky winner of that scholarship. What is the scholarship? What is this 12-month program? There are 4 stages to the program. Each stage is 90 day. We do a 90-day sprint. It's a clear focus on getting that in place. Stage 1, we will be igniting your inner champion with the core business foundations. The next 90 days, once we've got your core business foundations in place, we're going to work on accelerating your authority, because we are going to go from idea to launch your Thought Leader podcast. Then once your podcast is launched, oops, let's go back. Press that button too quickly. Once your podcast is launched, it's like, what next? What do I do with this now? Then we start to build your legacy, that momentum that you're already creating. We want to continue to build on that momentum so that you can continue to build impact. Then the next 90 days, we're taking that even further, the building of legacy. We're going to scale up your influence and your income. And that's what we're going to be doing over the 12 months to help you go from invisible to influential, trusted authority, but creating systems and processes and content that is going to continue to attract your ideal client, so that you don't feel like you're spinning your wheels each and every time you're marketing and you're trying to get your message out there to speak to your ideal client. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. Attend the days or watch the recordings so that you can then go and take your biggest aha and share it beneath the quote post, or the quote that you'll see. What was your biggest aha? And that is inside our Podcasting with Purpose community. There's the link to go there, podcastingwithpurpose.com/community. If you take a selfie or a picture of the workbook with the computer and you tag me across one of the social platforms, you get an extra name in the hat for that. You can find out a little bit more about what you need to do to get in the winning. industrythoughtleaderacademy.com/win. I'll be announcing it tomorrow.